Hello everyone and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well. This is the show, and I'm going to do it where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it is live if it's March 18th at about 5:15 for around 45 or 50 minutes. And what do we do? Each week we take a different topic and we have a lovely guest. And today is no exception. We have a fantastic guest with us today and a very interesting topic. And because it's live, we really encourage you, if you are here live, to get involved, say hello, pop a question in. Because you are the producers of this show. You're the directors of this show. You're going to be sitting in one of those chairs with the word director written on your back. Because we genuinely start off with nothing written down. I'm going to show you my piece of paper there. That's what's written down. And it's because this is a conversation between us all. And it's a conversation where we can go any direction we want, really. So really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Today's topic is franchise tech challenges. So it's going to be an interesting one. And we have the lovely Neil Muttock from Evolve with us. Neil, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Well, thank you, Harvey. Absolute pleasure. I've never been described as lovely before, or not for a long time. So that's very nice. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And Evolve are one of our lovely sponsors. So thank you for supporting us on the show. What I thought we'd start off with is a little bit of an introduction to yourself, to Evolve, so that we can get an idea of why we're talking about tech today and what you do there at Evolve.
Yeah, so my role is commercial director at Evolve Business Group. So my responsibility kind of spans to the building out and delivering against our sales strategy, and also kind of managing those relationships with our key suppliers across the UK and beyond. Evolve as a business group, we deliver and manage underlying IT infrastructure. Typically for multi-site brands and franchisees operating in the retail and hospitality sectors. We, by way of credibility, I suppose, we look after around 9,500 sites internationally. So that's across 12 countries, the UK being our biggest growth arm. And typically, I think broken down, our solution consists of business grade connectivity or internet access and guest Wi-Fi solution, but all run on a platform that gives those multi-site brands access to and full visibility to how their kind of IT network is performing.
Oh, fantastic. It's great to have that introduction, try and understand a little bit more about what you do, because I think it's one of these businesses where what you do is not necessarily as simple to explain as some businesses. I think I remember talking to you about if it was in a tin, what would be written on the front. But I think, again, it's in having these conversations that we understand what the challenges are, and we understand then different solutions for our industry to try and help out those challenges. Well, look, we're going to get into this conversation a little bit more in a moment, but let's welcome a couple of people who have joined us live already. We have the lovely Nick Plevin from eTalent, one of the leading recruitment specialists in the industry, and really helps us all find the right people for the roles that we're looking for. And he's put good afternoon, franchise friends. Well, good afternoon to you too. We have the lovely Penny Hopkinson as well with us. Penny is the writer of a fantastic book all about operations manuals. And Penny, I have your book with me. Am I going to get it the right way round is the question. No. But if you want to get your ops manual the right way round, chat to Penny. I've come up with that advert all by myself. It's a good one. And Penny put, hello everyone from sunny Warwickshire. Looking forward to this event. Well, we are looking forward to it too. We've got a couple more people now as well. We've got the lovely Johnny Joseph from Los Angeles. Johnny is a franchise auditor. And he's put, hi, franchise friends from Los Angeles. Well, hi to you too. Great to have you with us. And looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts today on franchise tech and the challenges and the problems and the solutions in the world of tech and franchise. And finally, we have the ever wise Simon Wise. He is very wise. And he's put, hello, franchise friends. Well, it's great to have you with us, Simon. I know you're prepping for your mediation course, and it's always good to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on franchise tech. Let's have a look. We've got one other person here, and who is it? It's Liam Hobbs from More Than Just Loft Ladders. Great to have you with us, Liam, and he's going to be here looking for inspiration. Well, I hope you will find it. You certainly provide us some inspiration as well, Liam. Let's get into this conversation, I think, by asking you this question. When we're looking at a managed network, and when as a franchisor or as a retailer or hospitality business, and we're trying to think, what is our managed network, where do these challenges in the tech come from? Try and explain a little bit about what an element or what the elements of a managed network are, so that we can get engaged.
Yeah. I think there's a number of things I could probably go to here. There's so many important factors. I think probably the three off the top of my head that most important to those customers that we're speaking to regularly are, firstly, how a partner by way of managed network provider handles support issues. That's critical. I'll come back to a bit more depth behind that in a second. Secondly, it's sourcing, being able to source and advise on the best quality connectivity available at the best value that fits the environment in which you're trading in, because that's not always the same for every operator across the UK. And then probably thirdly, it's how that managed provider or managed network provider deploys any rollout of new sites or migrating existing sites to that new network. So probably from just to go back to the support bit, I think what we're hearing commonly is having that one number to call, that one port of call for support matters, to people that know the sector really well. They're specialists within it. They know their trading environment. They know common problems that arise, and that they're on hand at a time when they need them most. So they're mirroring the kind of operating hours, I think is absolutely key. I think one common misconception when sourcing the key elements to a managed network falls into my second point around sourcing the best quality connectivity at the best value. There's not just the old OpenReach network out there for us to go and source our connectivity from these days. The market has matured, and getting access to actually fibre connectivity at a good price is more reliable, it's more scalable, is certainly more prevalent now across the UK. So I think partnering with somebody that can get you that access again is key. And then probably just to emphasize on that deployment management piece, it's having somebody that really takes ownership of end to end the installation process and then the support thereafter. Genuinely cares about the sector, knows the sector, I think is absolutely key as well.
Definitely, 100%. What I wanted to do, and we've got a few questions coming in, but what I wanted to do is try and give someone an example of a problem that you're dealing with here in the sort of tech. What you said there, about the problems that arise. Let's take a coffee shop as an example. I don't know why I picked that one, but let's take a coffee shop. And so explain, we've got a Wi-Fi network set up, and we've got a problem. Something isn't working there. Maybe the till system, or maybe our back of house stuff isn't working. Mm-hmm. what sort of examples in that sort of retail or hospitality setting do you find are the problems or the symptoms actually of a problem?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. I think if you take it back to that kind of pre-planning stage of really understanding what tech you are looking to provide, what service enhancement are you looking to give to your customer base, I think that's the foundation for your thought process. I think if you take kind of coffee shops as an example, the deployments of the likes of kiosks across certain states, not just coffee shops obviously, but across hospitality in particular, that they demand a certain amount of bandwidth. So of that internet connection that's going into the property or the business, they will that service alone will demand a certain amount of that bandwidth that the operator is paying for or sourcing. So neglecting probably the importance and the drain on the bandwidth that amazing servicing enhancement can give, I think can be a common failing and something that could be better thought out.
So would it be something like the symptom of when this goes wrong? So you're in your kiosk and you're operating and you're taking payments, you're doing orders and everything's going swimmingly, and something happens. Is that commonly, because I guess sometimes people don't know where that problem is in their network? Has the Wi-Fi dropped out? Is it a bandwidth issue? Is it that a cable has come out the back of some piece of equipment? And you can probably spend quite a bit of time trying to find out what the problem is, and sometimes solving a problem that isn't there.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that whole diagnosis piece is again critical, because the symptom of it is queues out the door, it's payments not transacting correctly, it's key services not performing, which ultimately has a detrimental impact on customer loyalty, not just spend on that given day. So it can transcend quite quickly.
Very much. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some real, these elements people don't think about. Think, oh, okay, I'll get some Wi-Fi in, that seems okay. But I don't realize the importance of getting this collection of tools to work and work reliably. And the consequences, like you say, queues out the door, loyalty. I mean, this is such a key one, right? That we all know in hospitality particularly, that you've only got to have one bad experience for your loyalty to be, quite adversely affected, and yes, you might come back if you're very loyal, but if it's your first or second experience and that happens, that's it. Suddenly you've not just lost one sale there because of something that's gone wrong, you've potentially lost quite a lot of things going down the road. So
agreed. And I'd probably just add, Harvey, I think that the impact of it can come on day one. So the deployment of any new technology, again, go back just for consistency, go back to kiosks as one example. The deployment of that, if you've not got that kind of underlying infrastructure in play on day one for the launch of the new tech or the new service, it can have a detrimental impact on day one, which first impressions count, don't they? So.
They certainly do. You're right there. Let's have a little look, because we've got I want to welcome another person to us, and then we've got a couple of points that let's have a little look at from the audience. I want to welcome Ed Purnell to the show. Ed, welcome to the Franchise Show. It's always great to have you with us, a real expert in our industry, and really supports us all. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Ed, as we go through this, and what tech problems you've encountered over your years of experience in our industry. Let's have a look at Johnny's comment here. Let's see what this one is. There is a danger of an over-reliance on tech in my world. Often I hear that franchisors believe they have to handle on royalties just because franchisees are on the accounting system or using their system for reporting royalties. I ask the question, how do you know when the numbers reported are accurate? Yeah, I mean, this is a good question on tech in general. You know, and it's important that you know those numbers. You know, and again, if you've got a till system as an example, and that till system is reporting on numbers that then a franchisor is using to calculate those royalty payments, again, it's one of those consequences of an element of that system failing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important to make sure those things are right. Let's have another look at a question. I think let's look at this one. If a business's IT infrastructure is implemented poorly when taking payments, where can the problems be found? You mentioned there when we were talking about the kiosk, getting it right from the beginning as well, and those first impressions count. You know, what steps can we take as franchisors when we are implementing that tech to make sure that we've got it right? Are there some sort of key elements when we're putting that in at the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. I think firstly understanding the art of the possible at your location. I think the importance of location for franchisees is critical, but equally as important is what's the art of the possible from a networking perspective at that location. And I think so. I would probably implore starting point is whoever you're working with from a network provision perspective, understand what connectivity type is available there for you. If you can get full fibre, I'd bite the hand off. And we're talking full fibre at a kind of broadband price point. So we certainly get the cost challenges as well that need to be balanced off. But accessing that full fibre connection, not only can it enhance the bandwidth capability so that you can run those key services and multiple of those key services, but it's also more reliable. It's not susceptible to poor weather conditions and then becoming flaky by way of performance. It tends to stand up well. So I think the connectivity is a starting point. Commonly, people looking for that cheapest option in the market doesn't really suffice anymore, because we are looking to try and, like you said before, Harvey, increase loyalty, and some of that does come through tech in my mind, and that experience when they're in a store environment. I'd probably then move on to ultimately what happens in the event of a fault or a failure, and it's ensuring that you've got a key failover process in place. So that might be something as simple as a backup SIM card that can operate on 4G, so that you can ensure that actually you can still take payments even if that primary internet connection is down. So those key services you can really focus on to make sure they're up and running for you. So they're probably the two key elements. But I would also add that, like, picking that right partner is also just as critical, and again, understanding those other tech providers that are complementary tech providers that are in the room with us at the same time. So I use an example. We were talking only yesterday with an EPOS provider who had real clarity that their solution demanded a minimum of 13 meg download speed. So before any other tech is implemented within their store or the store in which they're deploying their system, that store would need a minimum of 13 meg bandwidth. And commonly, like a standard broadband service can go up to those speeds, but would certainly be inconsistent at delivering just that EPOS system. So that really struck a chord to me of really doing your research on what demand those services that you're looking to implement have.
Yeah, there's some great tips there. You know, that SIM card and the 4G is a really, really interesting tip. And I think you're right. I think when people look at their network, they do. It's one of those things, isn't it, that we're used to just trying to go for the best deal because it's just in our culture. You know, it's just one of those things. But you're right. it's not about that, because this is an important tool for your business. And, I know at home, trying to do things like this at home, if my broadband dropped out, suddenly, it would pixelate, and, it would pause and all these sorts of things. So, you've got to have these things right for whatever your business is at the time. So, great advice there at the beginning, for somebody who wants to know what steps to take to get that strong foundation. And, you mentioned there about kiosks. I was talking to somebody the other day who'd rolled out, I think, 500 kiosks across if you haven't got that right, and it was in 12 months, that kind of expansion is really, really hard, because you'll start faltering before you've even got going, won't you?
Yeah, and you look at some of the extreme examples where what the penalties, I suppose, could be. That you look at Shake Shack, who amazing brand internationally now. They solely deploy kiosks for payment now, so there's no face-to-face interaction from a payment perspective. So, God forbid the kiosks on day one don't work, or the underlying infrastructure can't support them, because then that's kind of full access to payments being really restricted for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so vital, and I just don't think, and I think this is why this is such an important conversation, because I don't think that people realize how important these elements of their business are. I mean, I'm trying to think of a situation where something stops working in a retail or a hospitality, or the situation where you're taking a payment, and you've got an EPOS system there, and you've got some cables, and all of those things. Does your system help identify where that problem originated? Is that part of it?
Yeah, I suppose, yes, specifically from an Evolve perspective, yes, it does. I think, and this is where kind of key integrations with the hardware and the connectivity that you're using as a network provider are so key. So I think what we kind of really focused on is proactivity, and so 90% of the fault tickets that are kind of raised into our business, they're raised by us. So that's us seeing from our management platform, there's a problem here with the fixed primary connection. It might be a broadband connection, it might be a fibre connection, but that customer has had to fail over to the backup 4G in the example we used before, and it means then we can quickly diagnose what's gone wrong, how it's gone wrong, and who we need to speak to rectify it as quickly as possible. And that might be the site itself, but commonly it's speaking to that internet provider. Again, I referenced earlier, it's not just the OpenReachers, it's the other people that providing kind of fibre connectivity across the UK as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting as well, that that you can effectively identify a problem, possibly even before the site has realised that they've got a problem.
Yeah, it's typically when we often get that they're thinking it's a prank call, but quickly they come to realise that actually there's potential for detriment to the service, because ultimately the reliability of a fixed connection typically outweighs that of a wireless one.
Yeah, no, fantastic. No, I love that. Let's have a little look at a couple more people that have joined us. See what Johnny's come back with on here. Follow-up point: how does the franchisor know it all went into the till and cash register? This is an interesting point. Do you think I don't know whether you do this in your company, but is the tech out there? I guess this is more in the EPOS system itself, that's going to allow a franchisor to find out, whether that all of that money has gone into the till, and I suppose there's got to be a degree of trust as well on this, but yeah, it's an interesting point there, Johnny. Definitely.
I think definitely onus on the POS and EPOS providers, but I think from our perspective, Johnny, we can certainly monitor payment routing. So just making sure the route from payment through to the acquirer or bank is up, and we can test that is up and live for our customer base. So again, back to probably the visibility point and the alerting point, we can certainly monitor that. Yes.
Great. Fantastic. Let's have a little look. We've got another couple of people here. So let's say hello, first of all, to Julie Waits. And Julie's put good evening from the northeast of England, sunny today. Sorry to miss the start. Well, it's no problem. You're always welcome whenever you can make it, Julie. And looking forward to hearing your thoughts on challenges we have with our networks and challenges that we have with our tech, particularly in sort of our retail and our hospitality type brands. Let's have a look. We've also got Lewis from the Netherlands. Always good to have you with us. Looking forward again to hearing your thoughts as we go through today's episode on tech and your experiences on that. And we've got Brittany with us as well. Brittany Satterfield, one of our lovely sponsors and supporters, and she's put good afternoon from Michigan. Well, good afternoon to you. Fantastic to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on tech in our businesses, and how that affects us, and and what we can do to overcome that. And look, there's your QR code as well. But it's great to have you with us, and Brittany's going to be our guest next week, so really looking forward to that. Let's have a look at another question. I think we've touched on that one. Let's have a look at this one. What are the common mistakes people make when they're trying to fix their IT or payment systems? I think this is a good question, because I imagine there are quite a lot of things that people attempt to do, and maybe it's not the right thing to do when something goes wrong. Are there some things that you get that people have been trying for hours, and well, actually it was just something simple like a cable not stuck in the back of something?
Yeah. I think probably the first answer that comes to mind is probably fairly blunt, that people focusing on the wrong things. And that is where kind of the importance of leaving issues such as kind of common IT failings to the experts. I kind of generally really would push. We've kind of seen examples of a false diagnosis quite regularly from the store environment. We again a different EPOS provider we work really closely with and partner with. They reported that over a 3-week period they had 68 faults raised into their business that were actually faults with the network. So it was connectivity issues, not the actual EPOS system, but 68 over a 3-week period is quite drowning for their resource, and obviously from a troubleshooting perspective on site and getting that diagnosis and ultimately fix that they need as quickly as possible, it's not going to be the way. So again, just probably imploring that people partner with businesses or managed service providers that know the sector in which they're trading in and can help really with that diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can be so frustrating. If you've got an EPOS system, it's very easy to jump to the conclusion that if it stops working, it's a problem with it, right? And like you say, 68 faults that were with a network, not the EPOS system. And how much time was being wasted, and how much downtime and time where you couldn't be taking orders, and like you say, affecting loyalty and big queues. And people have SLAs. People have an SLA with an EPOS system and perhaps with a card payment system, and they might be wasting that time, an hour on the phone trying to diagnose a problem that's somewhere else. And
exactly,
that's just so frustrating for people, isn't it?
Yeah, completely agree.
You can just picture it, can't you? You can picture a retail shop, whether it's a petrol station or something, and this thing happens, and suddenly there's a queue going round, and then suddenly there's not only a queue going around the shop, but suddenly the pumps, people aren't going back and moving their cars, so suddenly there's a queue going out of the petrol station, and this is all potentially because of this network issue. And again, I don't think people realize the importance of getting this bit right. It reflects on all of our brands. It reflects on all of our franchise brands. If we don't get this bit right, it reflects on the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee, because all of these problems cause stresses and strains that are unnecessary when there's a tool to fix it. So we've got ways of dealing with it.
I'd probably add in, Harvey, I think like a consistent approach for across franchisees and brands that they represent as well, because ultimately that brand name across at the top of the door is ultimately what suffers alongside kind of the individual operating that given store. So yeah, it can certainly have a knock-on impact on that specific store's trading, certainly, but also on the kind of brand. Can't think of the word.
Yeah, the consistency, that it affects the whole brand. You're absolutely right, and in our franchise businesses, where that's exactly what we're trying to do, just as any brand does, which is give that customer exactly the same experience wherever they're going. And you're absolutely right, to have a consistent approach to these elements of the business then gives a consistent effect coming out the other end. And if you have a bad experience in one location because of a network issue, because you've said to your franchisees, look, it doesn't matter where you get your Wi-Fi and where you get your what speed it is, all these things, just said it's fine, that's your decision, right? And they've all got different ones. Then you're facing a really big challenge already on that. So you're absolutely right. Got to get that consistency. I love it. Let's have a little look. We've got a couple of questions come in from Simon. So let's have a little look at what Simon's got to say here. Simon's put, what is the best way to embed new tech into a franchise network? Key considerations. I like this question, Simon, because we're going to have a few franchisors listening to this, and they're perhaps thinking to themselves, or franchisees perhaps, that have experienced these problems and want them resolved. And they're probably thinking, well, look, I've got a big network already here. I might have 80 locations, all of these systems are already in place. Is it relatively easy to integrate this technology into an existing network?
Yeah. Look, I think it's a great question, and I think we touched on probably on one of the key considerations earlier. So I think probably broken down a little bit further would be kind of understanding, right? So what's that new tech coming in? What's it looking to do? How critical is it? And then as a network provider, we can work really closely to make sure that firstly it's prioritized, the quality of service on that service is maintained and prioritized from our perspective. But when we come to build out that network, and then it probably as granular as really understanding, as I mentioned with the EPOS provider earlier, trying to really understand what demands that specific tech has by way of bandwidth, and ensuring that we are proactively looking to say, right, that we've deployed a X type of connection here, it's a fiber connection. We're giving that store 100 megs worth of bandwidth, but this is going to take up 30 to 40 meg. Do we need to upgrade that circuit to ensure there is enough bandwidth to handle the demands that the new tech will have on our environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a good way to test bandwidth? I know there's that thing called fast.com, I think, or one of these things where you can just it gives you this number, but is that a relevant number when we're talking about bandwidth and seeing whether our network is strong enough for what we want it to do?
Yeah, it probably comes back to a bit of the point of, you can source fiber, you are very much more likely to achieve the headline or quoted bandwidth that the product states when you buy it. So if you're buying 100 meg of fiber, you typically get very close to that 100 meg mark. I think when you're buying probably the more copper-based legacy products, the kind of standard broadband products, as if you will, that's where you probably need a managed service provider to tell you what the likelihood is at your given location of speed that you're going to achieve on a regular basis. And we have a number of tools that we can do to check that in conjunction with those connectivity providers, that says the kind of typical speed you're expected to get at this site is X. It can hit that, but it also can go as low as this. And I think that helps franchisees, or should help franchisees in their decision making when building out their network.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, if you can get fiber, it's a great decision to make early on, because it's going to support a better bandwidth. And if you can get an idea of what the range of that bandwidth is, and that all of your current demands on that fit within even the lower elements of that range, then that's a good way, perhaps, initially of finding out whether it's going to be right for what you're doing. But I love this conversation, because I don't think it's something that we consider enough as a business. I think we think we've got Wi-Fi, and it's one of those things that's perhaps hard to sometimes understand what that number means and what that means to the things we have plugged into it. I was watching TV at home the other day, and it suddenly just stopped working because we stream only. And we're thinking, what do we do? And we're like turning the Wi-Fi off on our phones and seeing if that's helping and stuff. And I think it's the same thing in a business. You sort of panic and you only think about it when it goes wrong, and then you blame other things and you try switching it on and off again, that sort of thing.
and it is, and you mentioned it at the start in terms of the difficulty of explaining it, and because it's not the sexiest thing on the market and not the sexiest consideration a franchisee needs to have, when there's all this amazing tech to deploy, again, to drive loyalty and really enhance that customer shopping or visit. So we completely get that, but it certainly is fundamental.
Yeah, I was just putting what Simon put up here. He's put, take the batteries out, roll them in your hands and put them back in. I like that one. It's the same as switch it on and off again, which tends to help in a lot of tech situations.
It does tend to work now and again, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to put up what Johnny's put here. I mean, it just highlights. Oh, sorry, I was hiding your face. I'll read it from over here.
Probably a good thing, Jim.
He's put planning. What percentage in your experience of the implementation process should be spent on planning failure to plan? Is plan for failure? I just think it's a good point, and it just hammers home what you said about, if you get it right at the beginning, it's the ideal solution, and the ideal way to go about things. But if not, you've got to take where you're at, speak to somebody like yourselves or an expert in this field, and say, look, this is where we're at. This is these are the challenges we've got on our tech. And then you almost take someone back to that sort of, it's not the beginning of their business, but you take them back to okay, this is where we're at. So this is our beginning point. So you just plan from the point that you've got this challenge on tech, and that there's a way to make it better and a way to find a solution.
I think it's particularly important at the start. So, as I mentioned at the start of the conversation, we work with a lot of multi-site brands, and we agree some kind of core principles by way of network architecture when in the pre-sales work we do. So we understand the environment, we understand those key services, and then what that allows us to do, because with how a number of kind of brands in the UK and US brands that are landing in the UK growing via franchise and at a rate of knots as well, it's equally as important that you've partnered with somebody that can deploy quickly. So building up that foundation of knowledge about the brands you're working with and the franchisees' requirements. I think is critical from the beginning of the process, so that then you can build a set of common agreed rules, for want of a better term, that you then go and deploy en masse across the sites as they expand.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, you're delivering that consistency by finding out what these core principles are, what environment you're in, because again, you might have a vehicle or a trailer or something that's it's harder to, that you need to rely on a sort of a 4 or 5G network, because you can't get Wi-Fi to a particular location. I mean, have you found that? Have you had to operate on systems that rely on 4G, or is that always going to be a backup?
Yeah. So I'd probably say in probably 90% of deployments we've done, 90% plus, there's fixed connectivity there. But there are certainly certain situations where an example being like shopping centres can commonly be quite difficult to get fixed connectivity into. Sometimes new store openings where addresses aren't registered, so the infrastructure provider or connectivity provider doesn't know the premises exists and the store's opening tomorrow. So typically it is a short-term deployment for us, but again, we use a number of different wireless providers to make sure that when we're on site, we're assessing what the best wireless connectivity is at any given location, whether that be EE, Vodafone, etc., to make sure that solution is as good as it possibly can be. But we're equally as diligent when applying it in the back as a backup service, because we want to make sure that if a problem does arise, that actually you're getting the most out of that backup solution, so as many of those key servers can continue to operate without a glitch as possible.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well, because when you're talking about that 90-10, so most are going to have that fixed solution, but it's really good to hear that you care enough to think about that backup. But not only think about it and having it as a backup, but a practical backup that's going to work. And I think that's so important for franchisors and franchisees to think about that not only have they got a good solution that's the best that it can be for their primary network, but then a secondary network is also just as good. There's no good having a generator, in something like a hospital, and if the power went off, only half the equipment went on. That generator is meant to be as a backup to give you the service that you would have had, even if it's for a temporary.
Exactly. And we spoke to a multi-site operator, 70 locations, all via franchisees, that in the hospitality world, that their downtime last year equates to around 500 grand.
Wow.
And I think that was because, yes, the primary internet connection probably didn't suffice, but equally that failover wasn't happening automatically. So again, I think, having that diligence to make sure auto failover kicks in as it should do, and then kicks into either a backup fixed connection or a backup wireless connection that can do the job for you while we focus on diagnosing and fixing the primary connection, is critical.
I mean, what you just said there, because I have to stop you and repeat this number: £500,000 of downtime
across 70 stores.
Yeah, but £500,000. When you say that number, and when you're at this stage where you're negotiating for your networks and thinking about whether you need someone to manage those networks, when you think about that figure, it really puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It really does. We are coming to the end of sort of this main part of today's show. It's been a really interesting conversation. Let's have a quick look at what Simon's had to say here. How do you work with franchisors to ensure that tech is in place when the franchisee is ready to open? Yeah, it's a great question. You know, we're here in the franchise business, so you know, do you work with the franchisor primarily to offer it as a solution to the franchisees, and then they have that as a sort of solution that's ready to put in when that franchisee is ready to open? Is that how it generally works, or do you work with the franchisees?
Yeah, so typically, I think, Simon, our aspiration is to work with the franchisors so that we can really instill some kind of core principles across your managed network, across all the sites that you're operating. Just back to that consistency point that probably we mentioned earlier. But yeah, we'd be getting in conversation with the franchisors to really understand the key requirements at a very early stage, so that we make sure that all that pre-sale activity, that architecture is built ready for you, so that when we come to deploy it at scale, we can do it at pace for the relevant franchisees.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. Well, look, we have come to the end of the main part of the discussion today. It's been a fantastic discussion, really valuable. You know, I wanted to thank you so much for your time on this. It's been a really good one. And you know what, we could continue, people, comments are still coming in. And what I will say is that Neil and I can look at these comments afterwards, and we can still get in. So the conversation can continue beyond today. And we're certainly going to have this conversation again. Anyway, we have now come to the part of the show where my camera will go off for a moment, because I think it's technically illegal for you to see me without a hat on. So I have a new hat. Look at that beauty there. And that's because this part of the show is sponsored by PJ Murphy & Son, Bespoke British Hatters. And Paul has made me a lovely hat. And this is the part of the show where we stop talking about network systems and we stop talking about franchising, and we're going to find out a little bit about Neil. So Neil, tell us a little bit about Neil and who you are, or I don't know, give us a claim to fame, someone famous you've met, anything you like, something that someone doesn't know necessarily about you, anything you like. And then I will say, while you're thinking about that, you get a chance to ask me a question. And also, while you're thinking about that, we will be putting a QR code up top left that will take you to Evolve's website, even though we have the QR code on the right that has been doing that. So please scan that one as well. So Neil, yes, tell us all about you.
So the claim to fame, I suppose, I say that term loosely, and it's an embarrassing one. I handed over £1 million to Davina McCall after appearing on a £1 million drop about 15 years ago now. So,
I love it. That's an amazing one.
Tough 45 minutes or so.
Oh my goodness. What? So you had the opportunity to win £1 million and you didn't quite?
No, I failed drastically on the penultimate question, I think it was. So.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. It was lovely to meet Davina. She was lovely.
Oh my goodness. How long did that take you to get over?
There were multiple beers that evening, let's put it that way. And yes, so it was
you didn't have it before,
morning after, but it did take a while.
I love it. I really
was
love that.
Working for M&S at the time, and nobody knew we were going on, and got back to store, and there were.
I love it.
The band, so let's put it that way.
No, I love that. I love this part of the show. We get some great things. So no, thank you for that. And look, you get your chance to get your own back on me, because I've been asking you all these questions for the last 50 minutes or thereabouts. So you get a chance now to ask me a question. So go for it.
So what I'd really like to know is, if you could make your own dream franchise brand, what would it be? No limit on creativity or cash. What would it be? I feel like I might have the answer to my own question, but
it's a good question. Maybe it might be a hat one.
That's what I was thinking.
Perhaps I can get Paul to help me out on that. It's a really good question. The serious answer to that, I think it's got to be something you're passionate about. I speak to lots of franchisors, and the best franchisors and the best franchise businesses are when someone's got such a burning passion about something and they really care about their franchisees. So I don't know if it's necessarily the topic, although I have to say, live streaming what I do with this, maybe that'll be a franchise one day. You'll see other people wearing hats in other industries. So it might be that. But I think what it's definitely got to be is something you're passionate about. And I'm certainly passionate about hats. I'm passionate about people. So maybe that. But thanks very much for that. Great question. Look, we have now come to the end of today's episode. So I would like to thank everybody who has been here live with us today. It's always very important to have your fantastic comments. And apologies if I haven't got to you all. I will, on the train on the way home, say hello to you all and try and answer some of those questions as well. And I'd like to thank you, Neil, for your time and sharing your expertise with us today. It's been great.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having us on.
You're most welcome. And that only leaves us to say, please join us next week, March 25th, with the lovely Brittany Satterfield. And we will be live at 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for another great franchising conversation. So please join us then. And until next time, take very good care, my friends. Cheerio.